What's up, guys, and welcome to the Rebalance podcast, where we dive into topics that matter most when it comes to overcoming struggles, injuries, and finding balance in your life. Everybody's idea of balance is that bit different, so my goal is to give you different perspectives, practical tips, as well as expert insights into what it means to live a balanced life. My name is Robbie Cassidy. I'm a physiotherapist and a health coach, and I've been helping people reignite their love for challenge, overcome their fear, and find more balance in their life through the process of self-development. So, let's get into it. What's up, guys, and welcome back to the podcast. I hope everyone out there is doing well. And on today's episode of the podcast, we're going to look at, I'm going to title it, Be Careful of This After an Injury. But really what we're looking at here is the use of certain crutches after an injury and how they can become more of an issue the longer we use them. And I say this because I've been talking over the last couple of weeks, chatting to people asking me about what they should do, what's the next course of action after an injury, and often when I ask them what they're doing at the moment, a lot of their rehab strategies are based around very reactive and passive approaches, but they're not being proactive in their rehab. And that's something that I really push is I think you need to be proactive in your rehab. I think you need to be responsible in your rehab. I think you need to be smart about what you're doing and understand why you're doing something. And a lot of people are, when they go to, let's say, a doctor or a physio, and they might only go once or twice, and they forget to follow up, or maybe they just feel that they'll wait for it to pass and they'll rest, and then a couple of weeks to a couple of months after the injury, it's still there, and that's a problem. We need to take care of that. We don't want injuries hanging around, especially acute injuries, small ones that hang around for longer than they should. That they become a problem then, and they become a chronic problem, and that's what we're trying to avoid in these situations. But sometimes you don't realize it. Sometimes you just take it day by day, and then when you look back over time, you're thinking, wow, it's been 6 weeks, or it's been 8 weeks, or it's been 12 weeks, and I haven't really progressed that much, even though I've been resting it and letting it recover. So in this one, I want to really talk about how the problem with crutches, the problem of having a physical or a psychological dependence on something, and how that can delay your rehab. Okay, and this can be small crutches or it can be major ones, but I want to focus a small bit on the major ones, and then I will also speak a little bit on the kind of smaller crutches that we're all used to having as well at different times. And yeah, so that's going to be the basis of this podcast. Hopefully when you leave, you have a better idea of, I kind of want to give you a better understanding of, are you using anything in your life at the moment as a crutch? There's nothing wrong with using them as well. That's it. The thing is, like, when they're needed, when they're necessary, but when it becomes an issue that it's an over-reliance, I think it's more important to try break those, because then it can really, our confidence can be affected, our self-efficacy can be affected, all that because of the fact that we're relying on something that we don't need, and we're putting our own health and that in the hands of something else. Okay, and so that's kind of what I want to talk about. So to jump into it, we're going to look at the physical dependence first, and how seemingly like minor aids, things like, let's say, taping, bracing, belts, literal crutches, which are obviously a bit more of a major aid, they can escalate into major dependencies, and how you can use them all the time, where it'll get to a point where you won't do anything unless you have that crutch with you. And if you don't have that crutch with you, then you will consider not doing that activity as a result. Okay, so there is obviously benefit to using these in certain situations, like crutches. If you fracture your foot, it's nice to have crutches, and it's nice to wear the boot at the start and as the bone starts to heal. But I feel over time, and when you look at the research that's coming out, or when you look at what they're talking about, they're looking at trying to reduce our dependency on that earlier. Well, before, let's just say for a wrist fracture, before they were saying splint or cast for 6 weeks. Now they're looking at taking it off at like the 4-week mark and kind of easing back into activity, and maybe not having as severe a crutch on the hand, or a splint on the hand, because it promotes healing as well. You have to think about the body's natural healing process, and that's what we always come back to. And there's times when we need to introduce other things, and then there's times that we need to remove them. And in a really simple case of how this can happen is, let's say, and I'll talk about this later on, you could look at if you sprain an ankle and then you just rely on taping for a whole season. It could be that you brace your knee and you always wear a brace, or you wear a back belt in the gym, and then it just becomes that you wear it all of the time. Little things then, it could be like, I don't know, this isn't a huge one obviously, but wearing gloves in the gym all the time because of your hands getting affected. You're kind of playing with the thing. Is it better to build up a tolerance to it and build up a strength and build up kind of a roughness to it? Or is it better that you need, let's say you're in a situation that you prefer to not have the calluses on your hands, you prefer not to break down the skin on your hands, or you softer skin on your hands, I should say, so you prefer to wear the gloves. So it's all those little things, and it's more about, as opposed to me telling you what to do, I'm going to just introduce different ideas and different concepts, and I want you to consider them yourself, and I want you to think about it in your own situation as well. Then the other thing is the psychological implication of the mental impact of the belief in that if you don't have this crutch, that your body's fragile and that it will break. And that then becomes a bigger issue, because that leads on to you developing more likely to suffer from chronic or recurring or persistent issues, because some of the main, let's say, risk factors to that is the idea that the body is fragile. So you're reinforcing these negative beliefs about yourself, and that can really take a hit on your confidence. Like, you can really knock it out of you. And as a result, then, you may end up catastrophizing and viewing situations as a lot worse than what they actually are, because you're saying, I can't do that. I could never do it without a knee brace. I could never do it without an ankle brace. I could never do it without taping my ankles or my feet or whatever. And then you start to reduce the activities you do, because first off, it becomes a higher effort to even consider doing them in the first place, which we know, trying to build a habit, and if you're trying to really get into something, you want to reduce the amount of effort as much as possible, especially at the beginning. Like, a really easy one is if you wanted to go to the gym more, or if you wanted to run more, but you put your shoes in the attic and then you put your clothes below in the basement, and you had them all spread around the house, so that every time you wanted to go for a run, you had to go up to the attic and you had to go down to the basement, and then you had to let them dry, and you had to pack them all up, and you had to get everything together, and you had to drive 50 minutes to go for the run. You are very unlikely to do that consistently, because it's just so much mental effort, especially after a busy day. If you have the motivation on a good day, you'll do it, but on a busy day, you're not going to be as likely. And that's the thing about with these mental crutches. You want to try, when you're looking at activity and staying healthy for long term, because what we're looking here is not just fixing something in the short term. We're looking at like longevity and looking at the rest of your life, and how getting rid of these things early will help you later on in life as well. And then the other thing about having a crutch, and this is really important, more important when it comes to like a chronic or a persistent injury, is the importance of forgetting or moving past an injury in the context of the chronic issues more so. If you're always reminding yourself and the people around you that you have an injury, your body is going to be extremely overprotective, because it's going to become oversensitized to that issue, which I talk about a lot on other podcasts. I won't go into much detail on this one, but definitely check out the other podcasts where I go into more like how fear affects it, and how like your body can develop these burn spots around certain areas, and all of these other factors involved with it. But it is important to, at a certain stage, you don't want that injury to be always in the back of your mind. You want to try get over. There's certain obstacles that you want to get over, so you can return to sport. You don't have to think about it, and that when you do something, your body doesn't have to be overprotective of it. But if you have this crutch, I'm using the word crutch broadly, obviously. If you have this idea of a crutch holding you back and reminding you of every single time that you put it on, it's because you've had that injury before. You're reminding the body and you're reminding the nervous system of that issue. So, and you're reminding it that it needs to be more protective of that issue. So that's more of along the line of chronic issues and persistent pains. And it's important, as I said, at a certain stage of kind of forgetting that and trying to move on past that older injury. So to jump into it, looking at avoiding unnecessary crutches, differentiating between major ones, which is like wearing a boot, crutches or a back brace, and minor ones, which could be, let's say, taping, wearing like a lighter like knee brace or something like that. It could be that or a knee sleeve, I should say, and wearing like gloves and stuff like that in the gym, whatever way you want to look at it. Really simple story of how these major ones can become a big problem is, I was chatting to a lady recently who had an ankle sprain. Okay, ATFL sprain, the most common sprain that you get in field sports. It's where you roll your ankle, basically. It's your anterior talofibular ligament, just in case anyone wants to know. It's a tiny ligament, but it's a small ligament, relatively small. Happens a lot, gets injured a lot. Once you get back into it, it starts to improve. I think she had like a grade 1, grade 2 But because of the language barrier of the place that she was in, they advised to wear a boot, and they never told her when to take it off. When I was chatting to her, it was 12 weeks after she had worn the boot. Okay? I think it was like between 10 and 12 weeks. I don't want to get it wrong, but it was way, way, way too long for an ankle sprain. I often wouldn't even recommend a boot for an ankle sprain. An ATFL sprain, especially a grade 1, you're looking at like a 14-day recovery in general, like a 14-day return to play. Even at that, a lot of times you can get back to running within like 7 or 8 days, or back to more activity within that time. So if you're wearing it for, let's just say for the go in between, let's say it's a 10-week mark, if you're wearing it for that long, you're going to have so many more complications and problems because you haven't stressed it properly. You haven't gone through the proper rehab process. The ankle has never been tested and has never been given the chance to clear out all the, let's say, inflammatory markers or the issues that are there and rebuild strength. Instead, it's relied on this crutch. And it had gotten to the stage that she was like, whenever I take it off, I start to get a lot of pain. And I was trying to explain, yeah, you're getting a lot of pain because it hasn't been tested in any way at all. And as a result, because you've left it so long, it's starting to get deconditioned. And this deconditioning is only increasing over time. So you need to really focus on trying to like squeeze in little bits and pieces, work back into it, understand that you're going to have a little bit of discomfort and pain as you get back into it. But because you've left it so long, that deconditioning is always going to be, not always, but it's going to be there in the background while you get back into your rehab. So it's going to be kicking back. The other side is the neurological side to it. When you're not using it that much, the brain is really interesting in that the real estate in your brain is very sought after. Okay, every part of your body is obviously represented in the motor cortex in your brain, and that's why when somebody is an amputee, for example, the part of the brain that represents that area of the body, let's say it's an arm, then it doesn't just go to waste, it gets used up after a while. It stops the area there that's specifically focused on moving your arms. Is the, let's say, the part that's involved in moving your, off the top of my head now, I can't remember exactly what's beside your arm, but let's just say, for example, the one that's involved in moving your shoulder, that takes over, okay? And the nerves start to grow into that area. And this is why you can get this phantom limb pain sometimes as well, where like an amputee has missed an arm, but they can still get an itch, like a phantom itch on their hand, even though the hand isn't there. It's really interesting concept, but it becomes from this idea of where the real estate is in your brain. Now, not to get into the details of it, but that's the thing, is that the body needs to use, like the brain is so efficient in reprogramming itself. So we want to make sure that in the rehab phase, and this is something that I really push, is that, okay, right, you might not have the strength to be able to do these things, but you want to still work it in a certain way for the neurological side of things as well, so that your balance, your coordination, everything, that doesn't go out the window because you haven't used it. That's the thing, is that when you get back into it, especially if you've been wearing a boot for 10 weeks for just a grade 2 or grade 1, grade 2 ATFL sprain, it's going to be a lot more challenging, and your body's really going to, like, it's going to work hard to rehab that at the start. Once you get back into it, it gets a lot better. So, but if you continue to wear that boot and then every time the pain kicks up, you just say, okay, I need to put the boot back on again, you're extending your rehab phases that should be 2 to 4 weeks to a 12, 16, 18 week. And then you're risking the chance of a chronic or persistent issue developing where the body becomes really overprotective of that spot after. So that's the kind of idea of it. Now that hopefully lays the foundation for what I talk about with this idea of crutches and the body becoming dependent on them, both physically, neurologically, and then psychologically as well, where you start to fear the pain because you get the pain whenever you don't use the crutch, so you start to rely on the crutch a small bit more, and it goes over and back and over and back. What's up, guys? Robbie here. I hope you are enjoying the podcast so far. I want to take a moment just to personally ask you for your help. If you're enjoying the podcast, would you be willing to share it with someone you think would love it too? Maybe a friend, family member on social media, or even if you just brought it up in conversation with someone you know. The recommendation means the world to us, and it's because of people like you that we get to be able to produce this podcast on a weekly basis. So thank you so much for your support so far, and I would love if you could help us reach even more people who could benefit from it too. Really appreciate you, and we're going to jump straight back to the podcast. So that was that one. Now the other one I think is a bit of a dilemma as well, is the idea of wearing a back brace in the gym, like a belt in the gym. Now really, I feel, and looking at the research, it's an excellent idea when you're looking at lifting heavier weights. More so because of the bracing side of it, the security that you feel when you're lifting it. People can lift more weight. From a performance aspect, it can be very good. But if you're not lifting that much weight, and I'm talking about heavy weight, I'm talking about max lifts for people, not lifting like 50% of their max for 12 or 18 reps or 12 reps, like, or 10 reps. I'm talking about like very, very heavy lifts in general. I would be looking at getting people to wear a back brace. Now, if you want to wear it, otherwise, grand, because you're doing heavy squats, you're doing heavy deadlifts, or relative to your body weight are heavy, that's okay. Wear it away. But when you start wearing that belt around the gym before the lat pull down machine, you're standing in the squat rack doing curls. That's my pet peeve. But if you're standing in the squat rack and you're doing your curls, you shouldn't be in the squat rack doing curls anyway. But if you are, and you're still wearing the brace, and then you're sitting down on the bench and you're wearing the brace, that's becoming an issue, because that's becoming a reliance on the brace in cases that there is no need in the world to have it. And obviously I understand that there's an aesthetics side to it, which a lot of people like. They tie the brace, or they tie the back belt really tight, makes their lats look bigger, makes their shoulders look wider. Grand, I understand that side of it. If you want to do that, 100%. The functionality of it, you're probably not getting much benefit from it in terms of, like, it's not supporting you when you do bicep curls. If anything, what it's doing is it's sending an underlying message to the body that the back is fragile and needs to be protected, which we know is one of the main risk factors in back pain. Persistent and chronic back pain is the idea that you feel that your back is fragile. And it's reinforced from manual handling courses, which are a load of shite. It's reinforced from a lot of these other aspects, especially social dynamics. There's a lot of other things involved in that I won't go into in this. I have talked about them in other podcasts as well. Check them out. How a chronic pain develops, how to fix a chronic pain. Is fear contributing to your chronic pain? These are all other titles of podcasts that I've done, just a couple before this. But it contributes to that idea of fragility in the back and fragility in the body. And that's not something that we want. You know, you want to have your body, you want to be confident in your body, you want to feel strong. You want to feel that you're resilient and that it can adapt, and that it will, because it will adapt. That's the thing. And you can get the positive adaptation or the negative adaptation. And the negative adaptation, in a way, it's not exactly the negative adaptation, but it's more that it's deconditioning. So that is kind of a negative adaptation, if you understand. So yeah, in that case, we just want to be careful that we're not overusing something because we feel it's the right thing to do, and we're just going to do it when it's going to cause long-term or longer-term issues. Okay. Now, there are two important ones. One that can become a bit more dangerous is the just-in-case painkillers. These become a bit of an issue, and you can see it now in, obviously, if you look at a lot of the news, especially around the States, where painkillers have become more of a problem, and people over-relying on painkillers as a preventative measure instead of taking care of the pain. And what they're doing is you end up taking painkillers just in case you do get pain, which is, you really have to weigh out the pros and the cons of that. Like, you don't want to develop a reliance on a painkiller. Obviously, I think we all understand that, because they can become addictive for certain personalities. It's really dangerous in that situation, and you don't want to be continuing looking for stronger and stronger painkillers because of a pain. There's some stages, especially when you're dealing with a chronic and persistent pain, that you have to first come to understand the pain and understand where the pain is coming from, because then that will take down the level of pain you have straight away. By understanding the pain, you can take the level of it down. If you don't understand the pain, you will continue to fear the pain, and it will get worse and worse. Along with not understanding the pain and not understanding what's going on. And I'm not talking about looking for some crazy diagnosis or new diagnosis all the time. Pain is actually kind of simple in a way. in that it's neurologically driven always. It's driven from your central nervous system and your brain. That dictates how much pain you have at certain times. That's why if a soldier gets shot, they're able to move on, and then when they stop and they relax, then they notice the pain is sore. That's why when you step on a Lego at nighttime and you can't see it, your pain goes through the roof, and it's a 10 out of 10 pain or a 9 out of 10 pain. It sounds like you feels like you stepped on sharp glass, compared to if you throw a piece of Lego on the ground, you step on it with the same force and everything, but you look at it before you do it, it's not that bad. It's like a 3, if even a 3. Your body perceives it as a higher threat when it can't see it. This is why it's really important to understand. If you don't understand at all where the pain is coming from, you and your body can perceive it as a higher threat, and as a result, you get a lot more pain. And as a result, you take painkillers. Then they're not working because you still don't understand it, so you take more and more and more and more and more, and it keeps developing. And obviously, you have now developed some form of a reliance on it. The good thing is that once you do start to work on these things, you can start to improve them. So really important to understand that they can become a crutch as much as the rest of them can. And I hope that kind of gives you a better understanding of it, because I don't want to, as I was saying, this podcast is more about the concepts and the ideas, as opposed to telling people drop all your painkillers in the morning, get rid of the belt, get rid of the boot and the crutches that you're using. This is more consider them, consider the emotional, the mental benefits of using them, and the physical benefits of using them, and then understand that you will try to get rid of them early on. So we need to understand the emotional and mental benefits of, let's say, self-reliance. I am a huge advocate for building self-respect, self-confidence, and resilience, so that you are a lot more resilient, that your environment doesn't affect you as much. And this is another, I'm just going to go a little side path here for a second. I was chatting to a lady who's working on the Spine Initiative program. It's the back program that I have out at the moment. And one of the main things that she said that she picked up from the program itself is the fact that she came to understand how her environment was affecting her pain massively. She said she couldn't believe how much the people around her and the situations that she was in and the different contexts, and how that was really, really affecting her. And only from understanding that and understanding how environment can affect you, was she able to start working on that and start improving. Which is, I think, what for me was, I was like, I'm delighted that you picked up on that, because it takes people a long time to pick up on that, because they're often told the pain is because of a different reason, or the levels of pain on a certain day are because of whatever you did, or whatever silly reason that people give for injuries sometimes. Obviously, a lot of diagnoses are 100%, but some diagnoses are crazy. And some of the, especially when you're looking at chronic pain, some of the diagnoses are ridiculous. But that's another episode that I won't go into right now. So understanding the environment is really important. And if you build self-confidence and you build self-respect and you build resilience, the things that happen in your environment won't have as much of an effect on you. So in its essence, you won't become as stressed. And to touch on that, just to go another little sidetrack, there's an excellent book called Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers by Dr. Robert Sapolsky, I think it is. In that book, he talks about how stress is our perception, okay? And an example that I have taken, I didn't take it directly from that book, but if you walk into your house, okay, there's a dog on the couch, 2 different scenarios. You walk in, that's your dog, great. You feel great, like, oh, lovely, delighted. Can't wait to sit down there and relax and cuddle up the dog. If you walk in and there's a random dog sitting on your couch, that's a completely different perception. Like, that's like, what is that dog doing on my couch? Your stress levels go through the roof, because you're wondering, how the hell did that get in here in the first place? What is it doing? Why is it here? How do I get rid of it? Is it aggressive? Because obviously you're not going to go over it straight away. So that just shows that that's a perception issue of stress. Okay, that's your perception of the situation has changed, even though the exact in terms of the object, or probably the wrong thing to say object, but the animal or the scenario is the same from a physiological perspective. It's both a dog, but in one it's your dog, and another one it's some randomer's dog that's sitting on your couch. That's just there to show you that it does have a huge effect. The perception that you have of your environment has a massive effect on you, and it has a massive effect on your nervous system and how your nervous system reacts to your environment. And that's why I say that, is that building that resilience is so important. And it's tough to build resilience, but that's the whole idea of resilience, is It's a difficult thing. It's not a difficult thing, but it is a challenging. You have to challenge yourself to build resilience. And when you build resilience, less things challenge you. So that's why I'm a huge advocate of it. And yeah, you obviously have the ripple effect of that. Better stress tolerance, enhanced like daily well-being, improved mood, proactive approach to your problems in your body. So all of those are come into it, and I really, that's a kind of a note that I wanted to. I'm coming to the end of this now, so that's a note that I wanted to really nail down. So I guess what's the solution? The solution is that you're looking at gradual exposure. Is you're not just going to drop a load of crutches overnight, because then you can become more likely of injury because you have used them for so long, and you just drop them and straight away you go into the normal things. Some of them you'll be 100%, you'll be grand. But other ones, it's important to be smart about it. Like the boot. If she got rid of the boot and I just said start running, you can be sure that would be very, very sore. Would it be worth it? Would she listen to me again? Probably not. So we graded exposure. We pulled back from the boot, told her to work away and to use it at different times. And then hopefully over the next couple of weeks, then you're reducing the amount that you use it. So importance of reintroducing activities progressively after your injury that's key. Then the other thing is understanding your body, understanding when to rely on the aid and when we need to challenge yourself. Okay, and that's more important as well. Like that's the gradual exposure that comes into it. Engage in practices that are going to improve your self-awareness and your trust. You're trusting yourself to say, okay, I need it in this situation. I don't need it in this situation. I will continue using it for the next couple of weeks, but then I will wean off it. And then overall, most important is listen and consult with your healthcare professionals consistently about it to find the right balance. Going to a doctor once, okay, this is the one that I've often run into, and the doctor saying to you, don't run. How often do people take that? Because let's say you sprained an ankle, don't run, or you've hurt your back, don't run. How often do people take that and say, well, I better never run again, or I better never run again, I should say. How often has that happened? And how often does it happen to people you know? As opposed to when you said, like, just don't run for a couple of days, or don't run for a week. Like, this is why it's important to continue to consult with them over time and not just go once and then just take that as, okay, that's the way it is. So overall, we want to, I guess, understand that crutches are there to help us, but they're more of they help us more in the acute phase as opposed to a long-term thing. If you need them long-term, obviously you do you, but I'm just trying to show you that it's important that it will affect you physically in terms of the deconditioning side of things, and mentally, in that you'll become reliant on it sometimes. If you need them though, continue to use them. Challenge your beliefs though. That's the other thing, is really, really challenge your beliefs and evaluate, do you need this? Or is it something that you're just using because you've always used it? And would it be better for you to, because this is the other thing, this is another little avenue. If you have used something for a while, okay, and then you stop using it after a while, you have now achieved something. You've now overcome an obstacle, and with overcoming obstacles, you become more confident. You become more confident in your body. So even if it was there and there's no real risk of you dropping it now, you regain more confidence, and you tell yourself a different story. You have this different story in your mind of, actually, I didn't need that as much, and I'm able to tolerate things without it. I'm able to live without it. I can have a really good life without it. So that's a huge part of it as well. If you evaluate your own crutches, you work towards balance, support, like balance of support and of self-reliance, and then as able, then you start to overcome the obstacles that are keeping you back and the mindsets, and you start to improve the stories that you tell yourself. And like, it is about that. To finish on it, it is about that. It's about the stories you tell yourself. It's about how your body reacts to your environment. It's about, are you becoming reliant on something because there's no need for it, or just because you were told once to use it and you've stopped using it? Is that affecting your life and your well-being? That's obviously on a meta scale. But in a general sense, if we can, we want to have as little crutches as possible in our lives, because they have control over us then, if we do. And if we can relinquish that control, we can start to work on our lives, work on our health, build our confidence, build our resilience. Overall, we should have a better quality of life. And that's all I'm going to talk about today. Hopefully I helped you. Hopefully it gives you a better understanding of why we need to be careful after injury. Are we using something short-term or long-term? Why we need to evaluate our lives. Is there something that's a crutch to us right now? That could be anything. Like,
not to get into the deep end of it, but that could be a physical crutch, it can be an emotional crutch of certain friendships or certain relationships. It could be, there's so much more to that than what it is on a meta scale, but I'm looking at it on the micro for injury rehab. But that's all for me today. Hopefully you enjoyed listening to that episode. Hopefully you're able to get something out of it. Definitely reach out to me on Instagram if you need anything. The Mobility Tutor. Been hearing a lot from people over the last while. People are really enjoying the podcast. Delighted to see that the podcast was ranked number 7 in Ireland, I think last week, but that was the alternative health side of things. So if you can, I'd love if you could share this with your friends. Goes a long way in promoting it. But that is all from me, and I will chat to you all again next week. Have a good one.
Okay guys, thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're looking to learn more about what we do, as well as check out any of the mobility and rehab programs we have available, just head over to the description of this podcast and you will find a link to all the programs there. As always, thank you for listening, and I will chat to you all again in the next episode. Have a good one.